Our clocks are out of sync. All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the first paper session of the 2021 MIA Summit. This is case studies and current trends. We have with us this morning David Allan from St. Joseph, Jeff Apruzzese. Where are you, Jeff?
That's a great question. Where am I?
You're in Drexel. Yeah, so Philly is definitely representing this morning. So, and then from the University of Syracuse, Imraan Farukhi. Hopefully, I pronounced that correctly.
Exactly right, Clyde. Thank you.
Thank you. Ulf Oesterle, or O?
I go Oesterle. If we're in Europe, it might be a little different, but.
All right. Well, so we have some very different papers to talk about. I'd like to start out with David. It was interesting. Notice that you have created a stream of research on this topic. At least this is the second MIA presentation, and I know this isn't about your paper specifically, but I think we probably have a number of relatively young researchers, people seeking tenure and promotion, and I just wanted to point out that your strategy here is a very sound one in terms of generating, presentations and papers, and I've seen this recommended in the past. So I was curious as to how you came to write on this topic.
Thanks, Clyde. Welcome. Pleasure to be with all of you. So I was in radio for 20 years, and the key didn't work one day, so I needed to segue into something else, and saw the Sting commercial in Jaguar, where he had put his music, and it was a video. And as you know, in the painful process of getting a PhD, you have to have a stream. And that became my stream. I thought I was going to go downstream, but the PhD process is definitely upstream. And then it just became my thing. Some of you may know David Stewart, who has written a little bit about this. I saw him at a conference one time, and he said, I was very excited. Sort of geekish to I'd cited him a bunch of times, and I said, how come you haven't written anything since 1,000 commercials where he said how much audio or popular music was in there? He says, because you can't publish it. You'll see. It's great reading and it's very interesting, but you'll never get it in the major journals. So have a fallback strategy. And I didn't. Didn't have a fallback strategy, and I did publish. And come to today, this is a case study where I'm now proposing that audio branding should be parts of principles of marketing books and consumer behavior books, and I incorporated it into my marketing communications class because it's crazy interesting to me. And as you know, when you teach, it's really all about you. It doesn't really matter what the students play. No, but they seem to, all seriousness aside, they do seem to be interested in it. And I teach a course in marketing musicology, or music marketing, where it's a music and course, music and sports, music and health, music and religion, music and politics, music and all that. And so this is the next, I guess, thing I'm pitching. And a self-serving promotion here. I've got a book coming out called Supersonic Logos, where I did a book on music and advertising, and this is a music and logos. So think Intel and McDonald's and Coca-Cola and that kind of stuff. And so, so this is my thing.
And when will the book be available?
So it's in press right now. So it's Business Experts Press. The first one, This Note's for You, is already out, and this one should be out in the fall. I'm looking at proofs right now. So
Okay. Yeah, and you presented this as a case study. Will this be published as a case study that faculty will have access to?
Yeah, so I hope to. I actually proposed it as if something that would be in a textbook as opposed to being as a case. And I have a case coming, hopefully, on with MasterCard and their Sonic strategy on Ivy. Hopefully in the fall. This one will probably end up as a case study at Sage. If you guys, I've got a bunch of them there where colleges, not mine, buy the whole package. Most students get it for free. But it'll probably end up there, and I'd be more than happy to make that available if I can to anyone that would like it at that point.
I was curious how you distinguish your audio branding from just like a jingle. What do you tell your students is the difference?
Yeah, so a jingle always has words connected to it, music, audio, and lyrics, and logos don't. Like the Intel inside doesn't have something you can sing along to it with. But I took great leeway in the book of things that ultimately Coca-Cola changed its logo so that you could actually sing words to it after the first one a couple of years ago. So, NBC Chimes does say NBC. So it's an audio logo that is shorter and doesn't necessarily allow you to sing along to it.
Great, thank you. Those of you who are listening at home, watching at home, please feel free to put any questions for the authors here in the chat. We'll try and get those addressed in the time that we have. So, Jeffrey, you were talking about Clubhouse. So something that I would suspect most of us have not had a chance to experience for lack of invitation. So, summarize for me in a minute or two what you think the usefulness of Clubhouse or one of its competitors might be for us as instructors.
Yeah, I mean, so as I said in my presentation, I'm happy to share some invites with anyone if you have, the clamoring to get on the Clubhouse. But the whole thing is really interesting. The reason I chose to even look at this as a topic was for that very reason, as being a service that might be an opportunity for us to engage with our students as educators. But maybe not having the access or having the time to mess around with the program. And so, what's interesting is that the popularity of Clubhouse or Discord or any of these other communication platforms is that they've all had these huge spikes during the pandemic, right? We've had when we've all been at home, people have been transitioning more to listening experiences for passive experiences versus listening to music. But also, I think what's fascinating for all of us is, we're Zoom fatigued, right? Like us as educators, students are Zoom fatigued, but we're somehow seeing this platform taking off. And as I said in my presentation, I really feel like it's a great tool because it's informal. We all are going to have these negative associations with Zoom, I think, going into next year. It's going to trigger the PTSD that we were kind of in for the past 14 months. And so My experiences with it, having done small sort of internship events with students and hiring managers or people who are looking for, interns, have been great because it's not a lot for them. It's not like a thing where they're sitting in front of their computer. And at least like we know we're not going to see their faces. I think we can all, as educators, like when we sign on to Zoom and then like we get all those blacked out boxes, we're all kind of just like, we know that feeling. And so this, at least we know what to expect. And I have found a great form of engagement with students and speakers, even more so comparatively than things that I might have done on Zoom. And even I've had students in the program when we're looking at bringing in the next cohort of students, either through Clubhouse or Discord, having our own channels and allowing students communicate through this third-party software. We've had a lot of interaction. It's a great way to really foster a sense of community educationally. And then for the artist, it's really, there's a low barrier for entry. It's a really easy way to connect with a fan base while you're driving, while you're, in a bus, while you're at the venue doing sound check, to, host a Q&A, whatever it is. But I do think this is kind of one of those technologies that as we move forward, something that people will continue to use to just open up that opportunity for more direct to fan relationships.
You were talking about engagement. It seemed like your example was primarily from the recruiting perspective. Did you find that same level of engagement in your class discussions and using Clubhouse as opposed to Zoom?
I mean, I haven't used it as a direct replacement. I've used it in the sense of hosting special events, right? So whether that was like a master class or some sort of other speaking engagement, or again, something with internships, that I have found a bigger form of engagement. Because again, it's casual, like people can come and go as they please. It's less about feeling like they are, no one's really looking after them in a way. And I think in some ways, again, the students have appreciated this alternate platform. And it's also, the other nice thing too, is that they have the opportunity to connect with the host of these directly after. So you can link up with people directly after. And so I haven't done like an A and B with a control of like the same group to measure whether or not there's a drop off or an increase. But with events, even though they're different, I have found a significant increase in participation and people showing up versus us doing like an evening master class on Zoom with anyone from industry.
It's a great research opportunity right there. Somebody wants to get in touch with Jeff and co-write and research a AB paper. I know he's got his hands full between Mia board and a new baby, so he could probably use a little help executing that research idea.
I always use more help.
It occurred to me that maybe this was an opportunity to flip the classroom. I know that's a very popular, idea these days in pedagogy. And have you attempted to do that, or thought about how that might work?
I haven't used this platform to try to flip the classroom, but I think what conversations that I've had with colleagues is that I think remote teaching, at the very least, has opened up weaknesses in everyone's pedagogical approach, because I think we all now realize that we can't, lecturing to our students is not what we should be doing. We need to figure out a way to be as participatory as possible. And I think that's something that I was guilty of on campus. But when we go remote, when everyone's on their laptop 6, 7, 8 hours a day, I think it really shows us that we should capitalize on those opportunities with our students to make it more about what projects that we can work on. How can we use our learning management systems to host that content like lectures or readings, and then use those opportunities in the classroom to flip it and make them more involved versus, kind of that traditional structure of instructor and student.
Question from the audience. Your thoughts on monetization of Clubhouse as it relates to sustainability, like influencers and brands?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that, and I'm curious. I'm sure Ulf probably has some thoughts on this, or Imraan or David. But they did just announce recently, like in-house tipping or in-app tipping opportunities, as well as opening up creator tools. When it comes to sustainability, I honestly think it's kind of a crapshoot right now, because again, we've had a number of these platforms open up during the pandemic when everyone's at home and everyone's bored. What is it going to be like when we can finally, as shows are announcing, as vaccination distribution is rolling out? I find, at least in what I've been coming across in my theories, is that in order for it to be sustainable and looking at brands and influencers and things like that, it's going to need to be special, right? I think this is like the same when it comes to live streaming. Like, what extra opportunities? When I think about the beginning of everyone was just opening up like Instagram Live and like, playing from their living room, and it was a great opportunity. But now, as we've been in this environment longer and longer, we're seeing more production, right? We're seeing like all these things get built up to really give special and unique performance opportunities, special and unique relationships with fans and artists. And so in order for it to be sustainable, I think there does need to be something special, right? Is it going to be like a songwriting session? Or, I was on Clubhouse the other day, and there's like tons of these A&R listening sessions where it's like someone from a record label is just like, cool, whoever wants to come on and play your music for me, like, I'll give you tips. And they were not sugarcoating. Like, the feedback I heard, they were like, yeah, this is really boring. Like, you need to make this more exciting. And so I think by having those opportunities there, by offering, we've kind of knocked down the wall as far as access is concerned. And so I think everyone is expecting this access, and it's more about now just how we make that special and move forward, and what additional opportunities kind of exist there. But yeah, I'm curious, Ulf or Imraan or David, your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think we're seeing some monetization efforts on behalf of Clubhouse trying to entice the audio storytelling narrative. And that's something where they're looking at 50 creators that will be paid a stipend of $5,000 a month over the course of 3 months. So $15,000 to develop essentially what parallels what radio used to be like, where we tune in to hear the story every single day. And that is really interesting given the rise of podcasting and other audio storytelling. I think it's going to be a great opportunity for those who are influencers, have an audience already, to draw some more of their fans over to Clubhouse to follow those stories, whether it's like a reality TV type show or something that's a little bit more scripted. But there is some money there that Clubhouse is piloting right now.
Is the sound quality on Clubhouse or any of its competitors or any streaming significantly better than the others? Is that an advantage that Clubhouse has, or is that something they need to work on to make this happen?
I haven't messed around with too many others right now. I mean, every big tech company at this point has launched their own audio streaming service. as a direct competitor. And I think Clubhouse was obviously the first one on the market, the first to, jump on board. And I've heard some really crappy sounding ones that just sound like a telephone. And I've heard some where people have hooked up a better microphone to their phone as well. So I can't necessarily say it's directly associated with the service.
My follow-up to that is, does it really matter? I mean, with this generation that's been raised on earbuds and MP3s, how important is sound quality for a streaming service?
I'm speaking as an audiophile. I think, unfortunately, the answer is not very important, but that's just sort of my assumption based on my own perceptions of audience taste. But, I think, things like Clubhouse draw their attention less from, the high fidelity aspects of it, and more just from the ability for it to be a taste-making platform more than anything else. And I think that experiential aspect of music and discussions around music is sort of the new model of how people want to experience it. Fidelity is less of the experience. Now it's more of the social interaction around it. And, we used to have listening parties once upon a time, and I know some people still do, but I think this is sort of the substitute for that. So less about, how high end your new tower speaker system is, and more about, what exactly are we talking about here? And, who's behind the production, and what else did they work on? And, those types of things are drawing a lot of the attention.
I'm sure you get the same numbers if you ask this question in your classes. How many of you actually have a dedicated stereo at home? And it's like 1 out of 30 is a good result. Everybody is listening on their phone. So yeah, I think I knew the answer to that question before I asked it, but I just had to put it out there. So
yeah, it all gets which is actually better fidelity than the AirPods, the original ones, which is a good thing. But I mean, back to the original thing about music in Clubhouse or music in podcasts, they're just finally figuring out, after they get over the licensing issues and all that kind of stuff, where you don't put music in your podcast because you're going to get in trouble. Now, this direct relationship between record companies and these, like Warner did one with their own podcast and that kind of stuff. I think you're going to see a lot more music on these kind of platforms, even where somebody has a license to it and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's just the start of it all.
Well, this will be a good question for the MLC panel later. So licensing for all these podcasts and streaming, how that's going to play out. So let's switch gears a little bit here. And I have to tell you, Imraan and Ulf, that I was, of course, viewing everybody's presentations, and I took more notes on your session than any other, and not just because of my own ignorance, I hope, but this just seems to be kind of a complicated issue, this whole thing about NFTs and blockchain. So short of asking you to repeat your entire presentation, I'd like to talk about all these issues that you're pointing out with the NFTs, the limitations, and how you think that's going to be dealt with. This whole smart contract, which where did that term come from, and what makes that contract smart? It seemed to me that maybe it was a misnomer. So if you start by maybe addressing that issue, and then we can talk about the legalities and dispute resolution.
Amy, why don't you start off with that?
Yeah, that makes sense. So smart contracts are sort of a byproduct of technology developed to transact cryptocurrencies. So what that really means is, the financial system in cryptocurrency markets needs some method of recording transactions because everything is virtual, right? So there's no physical ledger for those things to be recorded when money has changed hands and things like that. So a smart contract is basically the set of conditions required for those transactions, like a purchase, to take place. So say if conditions A, B, and C are met, then party one will pay X dollars to party B, and party B will release whatever product it is. So it operates the same way a contract does, except it's sort of automated, which is why we call it smart, essentially. Now, the limitations of that is that, when we're talking about things like transacting music properties, it's a lot more simple for things like ticket sales, merchandise, actual, specific goods that are a very simple transaction. You pay me money, you receive the merchandise. That's, the easiest form. But when you get to things like music licensing, things that can't be really coded, through technology to just, meet a certain set of conditions that are yes or no. But when you have things like, oh, well, if you use music in a film and you have to think about whether or not it's truly a foreground or a background use, or if this is a reasonable amount that's being used, things like that. Some of these nuances that end up in most music industry transactions, that kind of puts some limitations on how well smart contracts can be used.
Is this more like, is an NFT more like buying a CD? It's, for the private home use. Is that where we are now? Is that in that smart contract or implied, or?
It can be. So you could release an album as an NFT. And so, the condition would be, once the money is paid, then the product will be shipped. So it's very good for things like supply chain management and release and distribution. It's when you get into more complex music industry uses where it becomes somewhat limited. But there's plenty of albums that have dropped as NFTs recently. Well,
I guess my lack of understanding here isn't the implication that this is, I'm selling this to you as an individual. It's for your individual private use. And that's the only thing that's licensed in that smart contract. Is that not correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay.
But how do you, right, so sorry to interrupt, but the question is, how do you code the restriction, with, computer coding that you can't use this for anything but personal use, right? So there's like a limitation there. That's something that a computer won't be able to determine. That's like human analysis is required for that kind of thing. Like what makes you use it beyond your permission? Now, if you're doing everything online and virtual, it's possible to track that to an extent, but outside of that, it becomes much more difficult.
So who's going to solve? Oh, go ahead, Al. Sorry.
Despite the challenges that we do see with some of the NFT transactions, there were $2 billion with a B worth of NFT transactions during the first quarter of 2021. And music is playing an ever increasing role in those transactions. We did see artists like Grimes and Blau make millions of dollars. Kings of Leon, with their album release through Yellow Heart, also did $2 million plus worth of sales there. And Live Nation recently said that they're looking at selling NFTs of concert moments. So when an artist goes on tour, you theoretically could have an NFT for the ticket, but then additionally slice up sections of that concert to then resell. And some people are buying these in order to speculate that the value is going to increase and resell them. On the resale market, based on what you do code into some of these smart contracts, that original rights holder can participate in the secondary market for every single resale. So it's opening up more revenue streams for artists and their teams long term. So that's one of the reasons that some of these issues we want to try to get ahead of when we're talking NFTs and licensing and all of that.
And that certainly makes it attractive to the creators to be able to participate in that secondary market. So, Jeff?
I was just going to say, what do you say to people who would say, I don't understand what an NFT is? Because I'll be honest, like, I understand what it is, but I don't understand the motivation for why someone would want to own a portion of a GIF, essentially.
Can I mean, I can answer that with one word: exclusivity. Right? It's I think that's what's driving the value of these things, right? It's like there is this limited run of products, and you special people that are first in line to get it, you'll be the only people who ever get it, because this is something that can't be duplicated. You can't, manufacture a new one. It's it has a unique identifier to it, and I think that's part of the reason why we see, vinyl packaging coming back. That like people are starting to treat this as like, oh, this is a special, unique thing that if I have that, it has value. Kind of like designer sneakers or anything else that could be, filling that purpose. Oh, I'm sure you want to.
Yeah, it's that exclusivity is important. You will see some NFTs that are an edition one of one, and those are very sought after. You'll see other NFTs that are available for purchase during a certain window, and anyone who purchases that NFT over the course of, say, a week, that number will be minted. There'll be other editions that will have a specific number. It could be 100, could be 1,000, and those are all that will be presented. So it's almost like, that limited run of vinyl. If you want the splatter press and there's 100 of those, you're going to pay a little bit more for those. And you may never play that version of the record on your record player, but as a collector, you've kept it. And this does parallel what we're seeing in the sports world with, NBA Top Shot. You can buy a LeBron James NFT of a certain moment, and that's $250,000 right now. And so, as soon as the music business really captures those moments, Taylor Swift singing something here, or AC/DC, or Kiss, or, legends, and some of their historical content, that those who have the means to spend some money on those moments, that's going to open up more revenue streams and the collector's market for sure.
My students are glassing over from NFTs because I've been talking about them all semester, having no idea what I was talking about. But short story, chief technological officer that I worked with 6 years ago at one of the consulting companies called me down and says, you're a radio guy. There's not going to be anything people can own in a minute. And I go talk to your record people and see whether there's going to be any value in the digital file of a song. So I went to a lot of people that I worked with, and some weren't working anymore, and they were like, nope, not going to be something. Nothing there. So I went back to him and I said, there's nothing there. And he goes, I don't agree, but I'm not going to do anything with it anyway. And sure enough, NFTs came along. But another selfless plug, I have a podcast called Marketing Musicology, and I interviewed Zach Burks from Mintable. And I asked him the question, what's the appeal to this? He goes, because they can. I go, why do they want to own this? He goes, because they can. He goes, why does somebody want an autograph of a sports, Tom Brady certified that he actually signed it? Because they can show people that they own it. And he says that it's fandom, it's engagement, and really it's pulling out your phone at a cookout and showing your neighbor that you own something he doesn't.
That has to be the last word. We're running a little bit late. Gentlemen, thank you all very much. Everybody stick around for the Music ID demo. Our generous sponsor, Music ID, is up in just about 2 minutes. So thank you all, and we'll see you there. And if you have more questions for these guys, maybe you can corner them in one of the meet and greets later today. Thank you.